Hello, hello. Welcome to another episode of Building a Leadership Mindset podcast. I'm super excited to bring an amazing guest that I just met a couple weeks ago, and she is here. Before we get into that, we are going to thank our sponsors. Thank you so much to Carolyn Bob Green with Training You to Succeed. Definitely check out her Passionpreneur community group where she is sharing amazing things on automations and just getting your business right. Thank you to Top Fox for sponsoring our Taking Off the Shades, Breathe Capital Planning, as well as Ladies of Leadership. So without further ado, let's introduce our guest today. Her name is Carlee Wolfe, and she is a global talent executive, leadership coach, and community builder, passionate about helping people lead and grow with clarity, confidence, and curiosity. With 2 decades of experience guiding transformation at organizations like Hyatt, Under Armour, and the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee, she blends corporate strategy and human insight to create meaningful change. Carlee also serves on workforce and nonprofit boards, advancing leadership access, belonging, and inclusion. Her work explores how care, community, and AI are shaping the future of work and how we can all thrive through the change. Without further ado, let's get her on here.
Hey,
Welcome.
good morning.
Good morning. How are you this morning?
Doing really well. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. And where are you tuning in from today?
I am joining us from Baltimore, Maryland.
Nice. We connected through Marilyn Morales, and I believe we also connected through Daniela as well. I think she also did an introduction, which is my first publisher with Emilio and Daniela. Super excited to have you here. And so just bring your story and kind of just tell us a little bit about, how it all started when you decided to become an entrepreneur, and what were some of the mindsets that you had before making that leap?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, lots of good connections that brought us together. So I love that. And I think in shared spirit, like we're connectors. And so like that whole ecosystem of, I'll call it like goodness. So love that we're here today because it's a reflection of good humans and good connections. For
Absolutely.
my story, I mean, I think, so first of all, thank you for the warm introduction. At the core, I just love helping people specifically as they think about their careers, like where can they take their energy and experience and passions and make the most of that in whatever it is that what they're doing. And at this point in my life, that's a clear through line, but that always wasn't the case. So you asked like, how do I got started? I think for me, part of it was just growing up and wanting to always belong in a space. And I was like that kid that like just never really kind of like hit totally my stride, like whether it's in the neighborhood, whether it's trying to find sports, whether it was trying to find connections. I just never found my full on like this is where I sit and belong. And I think that can be tough, especially when you're growing up, like that identity, that comfortability, confidence. And I think that that's always stuck with me. And then wanting to be an advocate or in the space with others where they're trying to figure it out. I don't think like any of us want to be in a space where like, is this me? Like, do I totally fit? And that has become really the driver for me in terms of like why I care about people like finding a place that is theirs. And so that I think pursuit started from like the career standpoint, started for me like in and around college and starting to get exposure to at the time, like leadership development programs, being in like student programs. I worked at the student union at Arizona State, which is where I went to school. And my job at the time was resetting meeting rooms. So like literally like switching out the trash, like moving the chairs around. And it was a tough job. And so it was high turnover. And my friend and I were thinking, okay, yes, it could be tough. But at the same time, it's also like a really cool job. It's in the middle of campus. You get to see all these interesting events. And so how do we turn this around? And the quick story is that we invested in, I'll just use the term HR, like how do we pay people better? How do we give them promotion opportunities? How can we clean up the office so it feels better when you come in? And we saw a huge shift in retention. People wanted to work there. They stayed, which was amazing. And so through that, I mentioned like the promotion path. Part of getting promoted is building, expanding skills. And so we invested in leadership work. I didn't know it was called leadership work at the time. I just love the connection that people were doing. And so that moment between how do kind of people fit somewhere and then how do they fit at work, those two questions collided. And then that was kind of me. It was like the start of the path for me. And I started exploring like, okay, where else can I do more of this? And that led to several years in and continued to be in like corporate America, working in for-profit, nonprofit, also did some consulting, really working with leadership development, company culture, employee engagement. So in other words, creating the space and the culture for people to feel good when they come to work and creating the systems and tools where people can grow, whether that's leadership or skill sets. Like that's been my career path. And the entrepreneur piece came in because I think like a lot of us, you got to get that itch of like, I can be doing more, where else can I be expanding? And in the career arena, that became one-on-one coaching for me, spending time with people, helping to discover like what's next for them. I work with a ton of people, a lot of like mid to senior leaders and executives in corporate spaces, even entrepreneurs who are sitting there and thinking, I mean, a number of questions like, is this all there is? Can I do more? What's next? Sometimes in the more business side of the corporate side of things, it could be maybe I got laid off. Like, what do I do now? I've been in this space forever. All of these questions come in, and that's where I intersect to say like, okay, how do we get like real clarity for you? And how do you build that plan? And I'm a huge advocate. There's a lot of narratives in the world that like kind of tell us that we can't do whatever it is. Oh, you can't have that next title. You can't have that next product. You don't have the experience to be an entrepreneur, like fill in the blank, right? These are the messages that we hear more of, but I really believe in like, what is it that you want to offer and do? And like, let's go figure that out and make it happen. So yeah, that's kind of, I don't know if that was a nutshell or not, but like, that's the scoop of where I got in.
Well, I love that scoop. I think we need some more of that scoop, but we'll get right into that. First of all, I want to just commend you for seeing a need in the spaces that you have been a part of to say, hey, what can I do as, you know, a team member of what's going on around me, and where can we fill in the gaps? That's a true leader, right? That's a true leadership mindset. Like we know that something is kind of off, whether, you know, retention is something huge, you know, just being in the corporate space and just being able to step into on my journey, you know, like really bringing the morale into the workplace, because sometimes they're just lost. Yeah. And there's so many things that can transform that mindset for people to really enjoy coming into these spaces and knowing that what they're bringing matters, right? And with like some type of recognition program, some type of something to work towards, right? Not just only the title or, you know, the increase in pay, but the fact that you need to like what you do and enjoy your day, right? Now let's just talk about, you know, you said you and your friend, you know, kind of your partner in doing this, you guys had those conversations. And was there at any point in those conversations, was there any limiting beliefs on like, should we do this or not? You know, are they going to really take us on our ideas and stuff? Can you kind of take us a little bit through that?
Yeah, it's a good question. And it's something that I reflect on, not a lot, but sometimes in a really intentional way. And here's what I mean by that. At the time, I think we were so young that we didn't like really have that limited belief. I think we knew that there was going to be some work we had to do. and like, could it be done in the time that we thought it could be accomplished? But I think we were just naive and like, well, of course they would want to pay us more. Of course they'd want to do these things. So I think that, and that's why I shared, I reflect on this a lot, because as I've gotten older and gone further into my career, sometimes I lose that. Like, I don't have that. I mean, not as much. I maybe it's like you're hardened by like experience, or it's different like mindset. But I say that because I try to go back there intentionally, because I think these are the same things that like hold us all back. Like, as we are adults, we grow into adulthood, right? We just kind of get into our rhythms, we get into our what's around us. And it's important to reflect on that spirit of what can be explored, what's possible. Like, yes, there may be some barriers or considerations. And back then in that time, it was just like time for us. But how do you work through those, and how do you be intentional about it? Acknowledging like the progress that you're making, and know that there is an end destination at some point, and to like stick with that goal in mind. And so I love that question, because I do try to visit, I'll call that like early stage of my life and career, and say, okay, like, you had no fear back then, like, what's going on now? Because you can do it. There's no reason you can't do this, because you were able to do that. So in other words, it's also become my proof point of yes, and the spirit of like, we can be in pursuit. Let's just do big things.
Yes, absolutely. That's what I'm all about. I do truly believe in unlimited opportunities when it comes to your life, and just building what your lifestyle wants to look like. You bring up some great points about us having no fear at a very young age, but at that age, we're also not taking these advantages of what life has to offer if we're not getting in these spaces. What would you recommend early on, especially for like college students in that kind of area where they're kind of figuring out who they are, what they're going to do, and how can they also take onus in, what their path is going to look like when they're having these things, right? Overwhelm, burnout, late nights, just kind of figuring out what our life is going to look like 20 years later, right? Can you kind of just share like what why fear should not be either the excuse or the pain point that we need to focus on first? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think both of you and I are kind of circling around this. I'll use the term like opportunity or possibilities. And so, how do you flip that into a possibility? Like, what, maybe another question would be like, what are you curious about? Because I think at that age, I mean, it's still a lot of ages. I'm still asking myself this all the time, but especially at that age where you're really just not sure, you're just figuring it out. First of all, like, I want to affirm that that's okay, and like that's where everybody should be. And I'd encourage more of us to take on some of that. And then the second part around curiosity, like, what are you curious about? I think can lead in a lot of directions, right? And that could be, maybe it's a career curiosity, a passion curiosity, a place to live curiosity. All of these things, like what we're talking about is life, all of these things add into the fulfillment of our lives, and is a part of the journey, right? Like, let's just pull on something non-traditional. Where I live might facilitate things I spend my time on, where I have career choices, where I'm building relationships. So what is the thing you're curious about, and kind of go down that path. It is a total moment of discovery. I think the other thing I would say too is, and this is like really hard to say, because I think a lot of us struggle with this, but you mentioned like so much, like burnout, so much stuff going on. Where can you also take time for yourself to ensure that you have both the space to have the curiosity, but maybe also the space to give yourself grace? We don't have to have everything figured out. I think that is actually one of the most powerful things that we could do when we're young and as we continue to grow, is to stay open and to not have to land in a box or a decision. And so if that opens up the relief valve on pressure, I would encourage people to do that. Obviously easier said than done, but if this is like, you and I are an added voice into that, I would throw that out there. And the last thing I would say is, don't be afraid to ask, right? Like, ask questions, explore. These are where we build connections. which I think is like evolving from generation to generation, like what connections and relationships look like. At the heart of it, which is why you and I are here, it still is a human connect. And so how can we ask, learn everything out loud with others? I think connection is huge, and it starts with a question.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And you also talked earlier about just, not knowing what that leadership space looked like. And that's what you were kind of into, kind of just seeing this around you. What would you let our viewers know about one, community, and two, networking, and three, coaching? Like, how important it is to have a coach to guide you? Because a lot of things we think we can do it ourselves. We do it for so long ourselves that sometimes we just throw in the towel and those passions die. And that impact is no longer being fed to those that are waiting for us and our ideas and our passions to really go full in, because we drive off of not just learning and education, we drive off of our own experiences through these life coaching, whether it's health and wellness, whether it's business development and all those things. How important is community and coaching, and really getting that self-development within to move forward?
Yeah, love the question, because I'm super passionate about both. From a community standpoint, for me, the community is kind of like the wraparound system that you have beyond your, I'll use this term, I always talk about board of directors, like sort of a closer unit that you have, like who could be played devil's advocate, who's like a supporter of your career, who's helping you in your life goals, etc. So like there's a close unit, and then to me, extension of that, there's like broader community. This could be our friends. These could be the folks that we know at work. It could be our favorite restaurant down the street. It could be our neighbor. It could be the person that we ride on the bus with to work every single day. Community is broad, but community is important. One, it's sort of like our energy that we give to and come back and gain from, and the people that we are around. And so when we think about community, I also like to encourage people to think about like what's important for you and who are you surrounding yourself with, because these are the this is like the ecosystem in which you're in. I also think community in the true sense is in service to one another, right? How can we help? Maybe that doesn't show up from the same person all the time, but at different times and junctions in our lives, our community comes to and in service to us, as well as we serve our communities. And you talked about, as we are talking, like kind of the path of like finding who you are, finding support, and that's where community comes into play. Now, I think this is really important, because when I talk to people about this, it's like an assumed that everyone has a community. So I'd say like offer up two things. One is, in your current community, if you have a community, how are you continuing to like curate that and be engaged? If you don't, where do you want to begin? And it goes back to the curiosity question, like what am I interested in? Where can I find others that have shared passions, or maybe curious same questions? That could be online, that could be around me. But just start with that one connection, that one hello, that one like I'm curious about this, and it kind of goes from there. It can feel daunting, but where do we begin? So that's on the community front. And in terms of coaching, I love this one too, because coaching's changing so much. I think that a coach is part of your community, is that advocate, is that mirror, is that support system to help you kind of dig further, to really learn, to get in discovery of self, to get clarity of self, to get clarity of where I'm going. And I think we can all benefit from a coach. Like, I'm sure you can name a million things right now. You're like, all right, what do I do next? And we have it within ourselves a lot of times, but it just helps. Like, I'm sure a lot of us have that go-to friend. You're like, okay, I've been thinking about this thing. What do I do? Well, coach is kind of like the professional angle of that, and is non-biased in your journey and helps you really support that. And there are a lot of options. Back to things have changed, a lot of options. There are folks like ourselves. There are evolution of how AI is showing up. I actually just saw a thing this morning where a friend of mine was opening a business where they're helping professional coaches get certified. And so they provide access to cheap, or I'm going to say cheap, like lower cost coaching to help coaches who are getting certified, but also help accessibility for those that need a better entry point. So all that to share, there's a wide range of accessibility. And I want to emphasize that because I think for a long time, coaches felt out of reach for folks, but it can show up in a lot of different ways.
Amazing. And I totally get that curiosity about community. When I turned 40, when my whole life changed, right? I wish I had it in my 20s. I wish I knew about it earlier on. But in my 40s, kind of where my life actually just kind of kickstarted. And it was because I had manifested and said, hey, God, I need community that can serve me and serve me back. And when I said, it rained, I actually meant it poured community, literally just changing the vantage point of what networking can do, what community can do. I mean, I jumped in to about 8 communities. And what I loved about the journey is that there were some communities that I found that, okay, didn't serve me. They were great people. It just wasn't what I was looking for. And I love that we had the opportunity to be able to explore that and really find out, well, what community is going to take me to the next level? Like, what are the things that are needed that I don't currently have that can, guide me that way? And then, going back to coaches, having about 4 coaches in my life, really tapping into the things I didn't know, but where I wanted to reach. So I believe those 2 things are, especially entering into entrepreneurship, you can't do this alone. Like, you just can't. Anything that Long Global has done to date has been because of community, because of connections like Carlee and I, that our names were mentioned in rooms that we may have not been in, or they put us together on a messenger group. And it's up to us, right? Of course, there's fear there. Are they gonna receive my message? Are they gonna be connected to like my core values? Is there synergy there? And what's the next step, right? Just having those things in place. And that's what coaches can do for you on building businesses. If that's what you're looking for, getting on stages as a speaker, writing your first book. Like, there's so many different coaches out there, but you need some, right? And you might need multiple at one time. So I love that you shared all those points. And the fact is that AI and all these things are just ramping up into 2026. And, that's really what we have to focus on, is where do we belong? And another thing is that if you don't have community, you can also be the leader of one, create your own and bring the people into your space. What I did after joining 8 communities and decided, okay, well, I'm just going to build my own as well. Also supporting these other communities and seeing where my business could go. All great points. This has been amazing so far. We're going to take a quick break and we're going to dive more into what Carlee does and how you can get connected with her. So let's take a moment to check out this video. Hello. We are back with Carlee Wolfe. That was a quick video on our Empower to Inspire kickoff that kicked off in 2023. And we are currently on tour. Check out empowertoinspiretour.com, where we are having some more dates for 2026. And we would love for you to join us in all 50 states. We don't know what states we're going to next. I know we have Texas. Hopefully Maryland is on the books for 2026, and we're super excited. So we are here again, like I said, with Carlee. Carlee, I want to tap into some of the corporations and organizations that you have worked for. We have here Hyatt, Under Armour, the U.S. Olympics and Paralympic committees. Can you tell us a little bit about, like what your experiences were there, and what was the biggest takeaway in helping and guiding those corporations, and maybe one of the biggest thing that that was a pain point for them?
Yeah, I think in all of those organizations, I joined at some sort of like inflection point. And so that's been a constant in my career, like coming in and major change and transformation, and how to think about kind of the new chapter and the newness that is coming. And so for the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee, that was about evolving leadership and the culture around performance. And so when I talk about like leadership development in the industry of sport, like people have been around a long time, and oftentimes they come from sport and then sort of move into, we'll call it like the corporate space of it all. And so the skill set and evolution of, okay, how do I make the transition from here to there is important and highly impactful, right? So what worked for me in the athletic arena, there are parts of that transfer over to corporate and make people amazing. And then there's then how do I navigate this in a different arena, like the corporate arena? And so we were working with our leaders on kind of building some of those like baseline managerial and leadership development skills. And what was really, really fun, and I just want to highlight this because it's like different from any other part of my career, was that we also ran those programs externally. So if I'm just going to make up like a Johnson & Johnson executive team wanted to go expand and build on their leadership skills, they would call us up. They would come to the Olympic Training Center and we would run a program, because we use sport as a metaphor to teach leadership. So they actually got into the sport experience: bobsledding, fencing, goalball, which is a visual impaired sport, sitting volleyball, Paralympic sport. All of these things played in. So super, super fun work there. At Under Armour, talk about transition. They were in the middle of shifting really what the brand was standing for and who they were serving. So had a tremendous amount of growth for a long, long time. And then was saying, okay, like who is our targeted consumer? When we think about the athletes that we're serving, who are they? What do they do? Where are they trying to move forward in their lives? And how do we build products around that so that we're meeting the needs of the consumer of tomorrow? And that changed around that is everything. So how do you innovate product? How does product get designed? From a supply chain perspective, where does that come and go? How do you grow globally to reach different consumers at different times under that lens? And so a huge amount of change, and that's what I was doing there, was a lot of change leadership. How do leaders lead in that type of transformation? As you can imagine, that came with job changes, that came with different ways of working, that came with a different way of showing up, like leading with a vision versus like, hey, we're just executing this thing. All of that shift, my team supported in how to really show up in times of change and enable others to own their narrative in the change and be successful at moving the company forward, which was a ton of fun. And then at Hyatt, I actually joined Hyatt Hotels in the middle of the pandemic. So I don't know how else to paint a picture of disruption other than hospitality. And if hotels were open, right, there were maybe a few people working. The GM was changing sheets. And my role was created to help really ensure that people felt comfortable and safe during that time, and that we were creating that culture across the organization. And that had grown into so much more from there, just because after the pandemic grew back, had a lot of acquisitions. And so the leadership journey continues. How do people lead in a different environment? How does the culture evolve from pandemic to acquisition to high growth? And how do we also support people in their careers as the organization continues to grow, so that promise when they came through the door of hospitality is a place for you to work and to build, we committed to that, right? All of these things, you can say what you want, but the proof is in the action. And so our action is in, some of the work that we're doing there. So maybe some highlights from the brands that you were asking about. But just like people, organizations evolve and need to think about how they're shifting. And I think that's my sweet spot, is like that cultural shift, the career shift, and helping make sure we're still delivering on the things that matter to the people that come deliver on those missions.
I love that. And I don't know if you noticed, but I love the questions that I asked, because you actually dropped some hidden gems, which were all the prompt questions that entrepreneurs should be asking for their business, right? Taking the time to ask the question to yourself and figuring out where the gaps are. And I felt like every question, like I'm gonna have to go rewrite this, rewatch this, and just rewrite down those questions, because I think those are very important questions that we are just not asking ourselves in the day-to-day as entrepreneurs. And if we are we really working to get those answers to make sure that we're building successful businesses, that we're creating the impact that we are promising to the world, to our clients, to our communities. And really, first of all, I love also just the journey and how you explain each one. And I'm a sports fan. I played basketball, I played softball, I played volleyball. So I love all those things, and using that as an analogy. I know some people that use food as an analogy for personal growth, and really taking like how to bake a cake and all those ingredients and how those things are. Like there's so many creative ways and innovative ways that we are probably not tapping into, where nothing has to be so straight cut, just like professional all the time. Like we should be having fun building these businesses and building these leaders across the board. We should be enjoying it. Yes, there's a lot of work behind it that just comes with the nature of the game. As far as, really creating transformation. And that's really the goal here. So tell us, Carlee, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to like add something in there too. Well, maybe two thoughts. One is, we talked about communities earlier and groups, and like, I love your love of groups and creating these spaces, because it's so important. And here's why it's also important. You mentioned, as entrepreneurs, kind of like, where are we going? How do we think about what's next? That's where I think groups and communities can also add insight, right? We can be in our own lanes and we could be doing really well at that. But if we're also connecting with other people, I think our lane starts to widen and our impact widens. And you get that from diverse experience, diverse point of views, and that all comes from like these groups and communities. So I wanted to like double down on that, because sometimes people, like I recognize this in these conversations, like, right, I gave an example about Hyatt or Under Armour, and they're like, well, I don't work there or for this big place or with that lens on. But I think, to your point, it all still applies. And if you're wondering where that shows up, it's in these groups. And the other thing I wanted to highlight too, just to maybe get people ahead on the entrepreneurial, what's changing and where does this intersect with leadership. What I'm seeing with a lot of folks is leading is transforming in so many ways. So if I'm an entrepreneur, maybe I've been running this business on my own. Well, now I have things like AI bots and agents and virtual assistants. And this is a muscle that a lot of people haven't thought about or leaned into. And the tools sound great. At the same time, this is your team now. How are you thinking about leading your team? Even if it's a bot or it's an agent, it still is a reflection of your business, who you are, what values you have, and where you're trying to optimize and reach. And so these are things that maybe I'll just like seed that, because leadership shows up in so many ways. And from an entrepreneur standpoint, this is a new one that's coming up that is I'm just starting to hear more people talk about. So I just wanted to throw that out there in the spirit of one community, but also what else is happening and how does it all come together and where we can help each other out.
Absolutely. Great points. Thank you so much for that. That's so true. Like we have to manifest the team, right? We can't, again, just going back to not doing it by yourselves. Like every avenue, every extension of what you bring into your world is part of your team, whether it's indirectly, directly, but it's still going to take you to that next step. So I love that. But let's talk about what you're working on now. What does your 2026 look like, and how can people get a hold of you?
Yeah. I love it. So I'll start with where they can get a hold of me. Two big avenues for that. One, LinkedIn. I'm always on there. That's where most of my content gets posted quite regularly, in conversation about leadership, AI, and also nonprofit board work. That is a continued focus of 2026. And then they can also find me on aceandaroconsulting.com. So that's the one-on-one coaching work. So what's in store for me for 2026? I mentioned community work. That's in Baltimore, Maryland, something I'm very, very passionate about, accessibility to careers and skills. And so I'll continue that work through the Workforce Development Board in Baltimore, and also Per Scholas, which is a nonprofit focused on free education, specifically in IT. A great organization for folks to check out. There's also local ones in many different cities around the United States. From a career standpoint, certainly one-to-one coaching. I think there's a lot happening in the world of work. So first of all, AI is disrupting a lot. I think people are worried about, where do I go next in my career? Or like, is my job going to be impacted where I work? Like, what do I do? Because it's super gray right now, right? Like, we don't know all of the answers. So I think that creates a sense of fear. I want to flip that and create a sense of authorship. Well, what's next for me? Not what's next for the company to tell me what I will do or won't do, but what do I want to be doing? So really helping people explore that and author their next steps. And then this leadership component that we're talking about. How do I lead in a time of disruption and change, whether it's for my business or within my own self-leadership, like bringing those insights and programs to folks. And then you mentioned earlier, Emilio and Daniela. So I'm doing an anthology project with them with the Born to Risk series. So I'm really excited about that. And also have another anthology coming out earlier in the year with the Connected Leaders Academy and their conference that's later this year, which is around focus. So I'm doing a leadership chat there. So for me, it's about, how do I not just get the stories out, but connect with others around these stories that I can either inspire, provide support on, and really, really just get out there. So those are kind of the big things for me for 2026, and also more to come. I'm in like the planning stage. Like right now, as you and I sit here, literally in the, all right, quarter by quarter, month by month, what are we doing in 2026? But those are the big ones I'm excited about. Moving people in their careers, getting leadership stories out there, and bringing confidence to people as they, take their next steps in career or leading.
Yes, absolutely. I love that. And I know you are about to bless many, both with your stories, to communities that I've been a part of. I was part of the Born to Risk one. So great opportunity to get your voice out there, heard, seen, all that good stuff. The Connected Leaders Academy definitely have been there since, they first started 3 years ago. Great people to surround yourself with. And thank you, Carlee, for giving me your time, for joining the Bomb Global Podcast family. We are about to hit 200 episodes. I'm super excited. We'll be bringing you back in a couple weeks just to reintroduce who you are and just share your amazingness. I can't wait to see what the world brings to us together as we enter 2026 in community, just really kind of supporting each other. So I'm looking forward to all of that. Thank you so much for blessing our audience today with an amazing talking point on just career change, transition, and just figuring out what is the next step. Can you close us out with just your final words to our audience?
Yes, I think be curious, right? With that curiosity, ask questions, explore. I'm going to double down on our build your community, right? Start small. It'll pay off big, and give yourself grace in this time of economic transition, world of work transition. Give yourself grace to really continue to follow what's important for you, and know that one, that you can do it, and two, that you have folks around you to support you in that. And I just am extremely grateful for the time that we had today to talk through a lot of these topics that I hope help propel people in their lives, and certainly as we head into next year. So thank you.
You're very welcome. Definitely connect with Carlee Wolfe on LinkedIn. It's scrolling on the bottom. Her website or her other links will be in the show notes. Thank you all for tuning in to another episode of Building a Leadership Mindset podcast. And as I always say, don't just take this information with a grain of salt. Implement them, connect with people, and always make it count. Have a great one, everyone.